Come get your victory at the table. Let's talk. Let's talk. Come get your victory at the table. Let's talk. Let's talk.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on whatever time you have decided to tune in with us. We would like to welcome you to another episode of Victory at the Table Talk, where we have down-to-earth conversations about various topics to assist with your walk with Christ. Here at the table, you can get the victory, but you can also get a taste of Victory Apostolic Church right here in Matson, Illinois, where we are building victorious Christ-like lives. Enjoy this episode.
Welcome to another episode of Victory at the Table Talk, the Justice and Outreach Edition. I am Reverend Bryant Warren. I am the CEO of the Victory Community Coalition, and I will be your host today. Today we will be discussing the historical confirmation of the first Black woman to the United States Supreme Court, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. And in order to have this excellent conversation, I have two of my great friends with me. First, or to my left, I have Assistant Pastor Darice Whitted. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Assistant Pastor Whitted is the Assistant Pastor of Education here at Victory Apostolic Church. She is known for her ability to teach, preach, and bake. So thank you for being here, Sister Pastor.
Thank you for asking me.
And then on my right, we got a special person here. I'm just so excited to have with us Justice Cynthia Cobbs. She is a justice on the Illinois Appellate Court. She's been there since 2015. She is heavily involved in our communities, and she is a great friend of Victory Apostolic Church. So, Justice Cobbs, thank you so much for even answering the phone when I call. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and I will always answer the phone.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I need
you.
it. So, let's talk about, I'm sure that you all watched as I did, the confirmation hearings of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Yes.
And one of the things that I noted was it seemed like such a brutal process that she had to go through. But what I was so impressed was with her ability to maintain her composure.
Absolutely.
The grace that she had. Can you talk to us a little bit? Give us some behind the scenes about what may have been happening there. Can you give us a little insight?
Well, an important characteristic for any member of the judiciary is judicial temperament. So even in an elective process, much of what you saw in the appointing process, one of the characteristics that is important for every member of the judiciary is that they demonstrate and are able to comport themselves in a manner that is respectful to litigants who come before them, also respectful to the law. So what I saw in that confirmation hearing, notwithstanding what seemed to be the brutality of the inquiry, was a demonstration of the highest levels and qualities of judicial temperament.
Yes.
Wow.
That's an important qualification to have.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Pastor, how did it make you feel watching that?
I was proud of how she composed herself. And I have to admit, I was angry.
Really? Why?
Yes, because of the questioning that was coming to her and what I deemed to be a gross disrespect of who she was. And I just so admired her, as Justice Cobbs said, her composure. She had to do that. Not only did she have to do it for herself, but she had to do it for every African-American woman who was watching, every young African-American girl who was watching, because she had to do that because she didn't want to be labeled an ABW, an angry Black woman.
Wow. Okay.
So she had to, that was something she had to do. And it cost her, I'm sure it cost her a lot in her spirit, but she had to do that.
Awesome. Man, appreciate that. But now, judicial temperament.
I like
Now,
that.
is that something I can learn in law school? How do I develop? Is that something that you learned in law school? How do you develop that type of self-control in a position like yours?
Well, hopefully you bring a modicum of it when you seek to ascend to the bench. So there is a vetting process for judges, even in our elective system. You know, we as judges, and this is a little bit different from how we do it, how they do it in the federal system. But in the state system, and especially here in Cook County, judges who are seeking elective position appear before bar associations and other organizations that are seeking or are anticipating offering an endorsement. And so you have to demonstrate not only knowledge of the law, but your ability to manage a courtroom and to be respectful of litigants, to be respectful of the rule of law. And you do that. And there is a fair amount of vetting and testing of that goes on with every candidate. And certainly it went on with me and, you know, my processes in seeking elective office. But hopefully you had some good home training. You brought some of that with you when you
Good.
came to seek elective
Absolutely.
office.
Good point.
And, you know, you just have a good spirit. A good sense of who you are and a good sense of how you need to meet or administer justice fairly and to be perceived as having administered it fairly. If you get on the bench and you're unkind, you're short-tempered, you're dismissive, you don't listen, that doesn't bode well for building confidence in the judiciary or in making the litigants feel as though they were heard or they got a fair hearing before a judge.
Well, but it also seemed like that her character was being attacked by looking at some of her sentencing guidelines, that she was softer on those who were accused or found guilty of child abuse or child pornography. Can you talk a little bit about what it means about minimum sentencing? What does that mean?
You know, even in the state system, and certainly what Justice Jackson Brown was talking about, minimum sentencing, there are statutes which govern, in large part, what judges can do in terms of sentencing. So, for instance, even in Illinois statutes, there are mandatory minimum sentences. There means for certain offenses, a judge may not sentence below what the legislature in the state system and in the federal system, what Congress has determined will be the minimum that you can offer. It doesn't mean that you're entirely without discretion, but there is a base that you can't go above or beyond when it's a minimum. So there are things that you can do as a judge and things that you can't do. We don't have unfettered authority. We must follow the law. That's our job, to fairly construe, read, and apply the law to a set of facts, to dispose of a case fairly and appropriately based on the law.
So it is, as you watched that, and did you perceive the way that there was an attack against her character? What was your perception of that, Sister Pastor, of when they were asking those type of questions about? And it was interesting to me that it was specifically about like child abuse. Why not? I'm sure she's had murders or other type of cases before her, but it was these very sensitive cases that they brought up. What was your perception of those questions?
Like I said, I was just amazed that people would have the gall to ask those kinds of questions. I thought that they were, like you said, a personal attack on her character, because they could not attack her character as an individual, so they attacked her record. And that's the way I felt. But one of the things that I want to, comment on something that Justice Cobbs said, because of her integrity, because she comported herself. One of the things you've heard it said that, oh my, your slip is showing. Well, with her God was showing to me, because as you said earlier, she took time to answer the questions. She didn't blurt it out. She got the opportunity to let me think about what the Holy Spirit wants me to say. And she governed herself as one who knew that she came in there prepared. I truly believe that she did. There's a song by Mary. It says, "And the God in me." that, when I get home, I get on my knees. And I'm sure she was prepared spiritually to come into that arena.
Gotcha.
Yes.
But and it seemed that what she was trying to express was that beyond what the senators made known about the facts, there was some room for compassion in her sentencing. Is that something a judge is able to do? Is provide for some type of humanity and compassion when deciding cases?
Well, we're human.
Okay. All
We're
right.
human, and there is a human side to every issue. The people who appear before any judge come before that judge, and they are just as human as the judge is. So you leave your biases at the door. You don't bring them in. And I know that Justice Jackson was really pummeled a lot around, well, what do you think about this? And don't you have an opinion about this? And what is your opinion about court packing? And she was clear and consistent in saying that is a political issue. Court packing is an issue that in the first instance would be presented to Congress. And it is for Congress to decide. And then once Congress decides, if an issue with respect to court packing or the makeup of the court were somehow to present itself before a judge, then the judge is required to construe the law and to determine whether that law is constitutional or not. So we are human. We look at, in criminal sentencing, aggravating and mitigating factors. The mitigating factors are the factors that tell us what's good about this defendant. I mean, are there any redeeming factors or values that we should consider? What's bad about this? What are the aggravating factors? What is this, a really bad guy who's likely to recidivate, to commit the same crime again? To take all of those things into consideration, but again, leaving your personal biases at the door. You're bound to follow the law, to hear the evidence, and to do what you believe is fair and just in every situation.
So it sounds like someone needs to have a very high level of character to be able to do what you've expressed, to leave your biases at the door and to really give someone a fair shot and to look at the case. That has to be difficult.
Well, thank you for saying that, because it can be very, very difficult. And as I said earlier, behind every case are people, are humans with human frailties and human issues and values. And, they're no different from who the judge is. Judge just has a different role in the scenario. So, you bring the whole of your experience to the bench, but you leave your biases at the door in order to reach the just result in every case.
Got it.
Awesome.
So what do you think the impact is going to be? Having a Black woman. I remember at one point I wanted to be a lawyer. I did. I wanted to be. I loved Thurgood Marshall, and I remember reading about him and just, man, one of these days I'm going to be an attorney. But God obviously had different plans for me. But having that image of Thurgood Marshall impacted my life. What do you see having Justice Jackson? What type of value is she going to have to our community, and how it's going to impact our Black women and girls?
Oh, this impact is going to be generational, because you have, first of all, women like myself within my age group, my generation, that we're sitting there rooting for her. Yes, yes, yes. And then you have younger women who are saying, you know what? If she can do that, I can do that too. And just for, we think about our children and our grandchildren, when they see her, when they look in their history books and they see pictures and they see her sitting there, that's going to say, wow, she did it. I can too. And that serves as a role model. I know that, I don't know if that was something that she intended to do, but she is a role model for her. I don't know if you saw in the news, there's a young lady, she's 19 years old, and she just graduated from law school.
I did.
19.
19. Did
She's
you
the
see
youngest
that?
one.
Her
Wow.
name
The
is,
youngest
I had to
law
write it
school
down,
graduate. Yeah.
Haley Taylor Schlitz.
Mm.
And she graduated from Southern Methodist University. And this is what she said when we're talking about the impact of Justice Jackson. She said, "You don't find your path, you make it."
Mm.
So what this says to all of these beautiful young girls who are coming along.
That's good.
I need to make my own path.
I agree.
That is good.
I agree.
That is good.
You know, if I could just jump
No,
in.
please.
Yes.
We often talk in legal and judicial circles about judicial mentors. And one of the giants in the legal profession for many African Americans and for white judges and lawyers too was Justice Eugene Pincham, our Eugene,
I remember
who
that
long
name.
since left us. But he's often quoted as saying, "You can't be what you can't see." And even as recently as yesterday, there were a group of judges, and I was included in that group, who spoke with the students at Rich Township High School. And you heard that. You know, that refrain, you can't be what you can't see. And it is just so important for Black girls, brown girls, girls everywhere, even boys, to see what's available, what you can be, what you can do. We talked a lot about dreams to the students yesterday. Don't be deterred. You can do it. The only limitation for you is you. And so every time you see or hear about a Ketanji Brown Jackson, every time you see or hear about a 19-year-old law school student, every time you see a Reverend Bryant who, without gray hair, still might have aspirations to become a lawyer.
Bald hair, so.
Well, don't show that part. You can be it. And we stressed that with the students on yesterday. It's just so significant. And I shared my story, and I'm not going to hog the mic.
No, please.
But I shared my story and my journey to the bench because when I was coming along and I graduated high school, law was not a profession that was seemingly available. There were no lawyers in my family. We didn't know any lawyers. So for Black children, Black students graduating high school 10 years ago, when we came out of high school, just a few years back, you could be a social worker. You could be a teacher, you could be a secretary, but no one talked about you could be a lawyer or a doctor. And there are none of those in my family. I'm the only lawyer. I'm the only judge in my family. And so it is gratifying to see the shift, the paradigm shift in our society and in our communities, to see Black and brown children growing up with aspirations now. They talk about being doctors. They talk about being lawyers. It would be nice if some of them talked about being social workers. I thought that was a credible.
Or teacher. That's
or
a good
teacher.
profession.
Great professions, and we're always going to need them. But it's just gratifying to see that shift, and the shift continues. And the more we see a Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, and the more we see 19-year-old law students, and all of those who are just following their dreams, you know, an African-American lieutenant governor, an African-American vice president.
Yes.
We've made some strides. We have a ways to go.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think, you know, it bodes well for our young folks coming up to see the advances that we've made and to be able to state as an aspirational goal that they want to be more than what I could say I wanted to be when I graduated high school.
That's good. That's good.
Oh, I love that. Yes, yes, yes.
But going back to the idea of making a path, as you have and you have as well, there's a cost to be that first person through the door, to be that pioneer. There is a cost to your family. There's a cost for you individually. Can you talk a little bit about the cost that you had to pay to be the first in your family? One of probably, are you the only? I don't know if there are many Black women at your level in the justice system. Can you talk about that?
Well, we're still in the minority, African Americans in the justice system. And I'll talk just a little bit about the First District Appellate Court. And just briefly, the Illinois Appellate Court has about 56 judges throughout the state. 24 of the appellate court justices are housed right here in Cook County in the First District. So I think we have one woman, African-American woman, on the Third District Appellate Court. We have one on the Fourth District Appellate Court, and the other 4 or 5 of us are on the First District Appellate Court. Now, there are 24 justices in the First District Appellate Court. Wow. So we're still very much in the minority. But there is a cost. There always is a cost, and that has not diminished. Now, I don't experience this as much as I did when I was the first director of the Illinois courts. I was the first African American, the first woman that the Supreme Court appointed to serve as the director of the Illinois courts, a job that not many people even understand or know about, but it is a significant piece of work that is completed on behalf of the Supreme Court and with the Supreme Court. But as the first African American director of the court, I was frequently confronted with, well, you're not a judge. You don't tell us what to do. You're not really making the decisions. You're just the mouthpiece.
Wow.
Or I would appear somewhere with, at that time, my executive assistant, who was a white male, and he would be perceived as the director, and I was perceived as the secretary.
Wow.
Oh,
It
my.
was like, so there are costs. There is still a lot of work to do because we are still perceived to be support, not
Oh.
Yep.
the superior, but
Right,
the subordinate.
Yep.
So
Yep.
there
Wow.
is a cost.
That's good.
Isn't that
That's
something?
good.
Isn't that something?
So talk to me, Assistant Pastor. You mentioned, and we talked about Justice Jackson's ability to control herself. And as I watch in my imagination, every time she dropped her head, she was saying, "In the name of Jesus, don't let me
Yes.
snap on these folks today." And then she lift up Senator Justice Pleasance. How do we develop that type of self control? I mean, she learned it in law school or something,
Okay.
but how do I get that?
I truly believe, like you said, that's something that comes from a place where you're alone with me to God. Where you get that, when you have that sense of, I'm able to, though he slay me, yet, even though these daggers are coming after me, yet, even though all of this is happening, yet. And when we look at that, we're able to say, wow, if she can, I can. The same thing with the position of her appointment. If she can, I can, because that teaches you a lesson, like you say, that you don't want to go off and be an angry Black woman, that you take that in your day by day, 24-hour situations. There's something that I heard, it said, does it have to be said? Does it have to be said by me? Does it have to be said by me right now? So when you're looking at that, I'm sure in the back of her mind, okay, I do have to say something, but she chose her words carefully. She chose her words well. So when her words were spoken, they were poignant, they were truthful, and they were fruitful.
That's good.
Because so they were able to show that, all of the things, like you say, the preparation, all of her years. Am I correct in saying that she is the only one of the justices who was ever a public defender?
I think that's correct.
I think I read that
I think
somewhere.
that's correct.
Because when you talk about that human side, that side that gives you some compassion, that she has been there in the trenches representing the underrepresented. So
That's good.
that way she brings all of that with her to this highest court.
Got it.
And I think you have to have a strong sense of who you are.
Yes.
And you always, you can never control what others will say or do to you, but you always can control or have control over how you respond, how you react. So you have to have a strong sense of who you are and what
Absolutely.
you bring to the table. So I can't imagine that Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson even doubted for one moment that she was qualified to serve in the position.
Yes.
None of us would question that. Even her strongest detractors in the Senate hearings couldn't assert to her that she didn't have the legal competence.
Correct.
That was a no-brainer. Everyone knew she wouldn't be sitting at the table if she didn't have the
If she
legal
was
competence.
not, absolutely.
So she didn't have to defend that piece. And when you don't have to defend that piece, or when they don't have that, then they have to look for something else. So let's see if there's something under the character. Let's see if there's something, with respect to her temperament, because we know she has the legal capability, the competence to do the job.
Good point.
But does she bring the right temperament? Is she going to be what they characterize as an activist judge? Or is she going to follow the law? And she was clear. I'm not an activist judge. My role, my job. And it wasn't just her job. She spoke for every judge in America.
Right. Yes.
The role, the job of a judge is to look at a set of facts and to apply the law to that set of facts to come out with the best and the fairest result possible. She has a strong sense of who she is.
Yes.
Very
And
much
that
so.
came across.
Absolutely. And I loved how she had her family there as
Yes.
well.
Oh, yes.
A mother, father,
Oh,
brother
yeah.
was there, her husband, her children. And there's this one picture of her daughter looking at her with so much pride. I mean, you just could feel the love and the pride that was there. But one of the things that I'm challenged with is that it seems that every Black person who strives to be in a professional role, to go into the next level, has to go through some type of a confirmation process from white America. And that was a concern for me, is that, so not only did they question her legal abilities, but what it was about her character, questioning critical race theory, even though she said, I'm just on the board. Well, why is it that I'm just on the board, Senator? So it's an opportunity to feels like to just tear her down. And then when we're in those positions, we realize that we're not here just representing ourselves. We are representing our entire Black family, our community, our church. That is such a heavy load to have.
Sure is.
Can you speak to that? Why do we carry that such a heavy load when it comes to achievement and making sure that we're representing our people well?
I believe it's because of the way we've been perceived throughout history. Because you have to remember, when Jackie Robinson came through, he was the first. He knew there was only so much, and the vile things he was called when he stepped out on the diamond. When we look at, going decades ahead, when we look at Barack Obama, the things that he had to, say that he was the first. And I think somewhere in the back of the mind, it's saying that, like you said, I know who I am. I like that, Judge. I know who I am. And I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm doing this for my race. I'm doing this like Jesse Owens when he was in Germany. I'm doing this for my race. We do have an obligation. Like you said, when you came through your family, you're the only judge. And one thing that came to mind, Pastor, that as educators, I just thought as educators, we have to learn how to steer children toward the things that they may think are impossible. That what you're doing now, you're not doing your homework today, will impact the things, your grades will impact your future. It's going to impact everything you do. So when we as educators, although I'm retired, once a teacher, always a teacher.
You're not retired, actually. You may not go to the school building, but you're not retired.
That's true. That's good.
But, thank you. But when we steer children, because like you said, back in the day, oh, yes, you want to be a teacher? Yes, that's okay. Because I didn't, my father wanted me to be a nurse. No. So, but when we let children know that there are, you're real good with your hands. Have you ever thought about, technology? You're playing this game. There are people who invent these games. Somebody has to come out and fix this game. Have you ever thought about that? We need to steer our children toward the new things that have come on the scene. So we have to learn how to make sure that they know that there's something other.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Did you want to add something to
Well,
that?
you know, sometimes I think, we've been around for a few generations. At least I've been around for a few generations, and so for many of us coming through or coming up in the environment and before integration, I went to an all Black elementary school,
So did I.
and then I went to an integrated middle school and an integrated high school, and as I can remember, for every year that I spent in the all Black elementary school, I never questioned whether I was good enough. I never questioned whether I was smart enough. And my grades indicated that I was smart enough. Interestingly, once there was integration and I was one of, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 African American students in a predominantly white middle school, I began to question.
Wow.
And the instructors also helped me question because they would say, you're not smart enough. You can't write well enough. You can't do this well enough. In high school, I had gone through all of the college prep courses and I did well in high school. And my white guidance counselor said, you're not good enough.
Wow.
You need to find a vocation. College, no, we're not helping you to find a scholarship. So I think that ingrained in many of us is we have to do more because we have to prove, we have to show, we have to demonstrate that we're good enough. And I am just so hoping and praying for the day when our African American babies coming through the system no longer have to believe that I have to do it 3 times better to even be validated for doing it just as good as my white counterpart.
Yeah.
I'm looking for that day.
We're praying for it happening.
Yes.
Because this idea of being confirmed on a daily basis, the questions that we receive, as if we're an anomaly. Like, how did you get here? I don't know. I'm sure someone's asked you that question. Well, what did your parents do? They're trying to figure out, like, what. So, or did you come through an affirmative action program, or both your parents are still together? Some people, they're just surprised when we walk into these spaces, and it's like they want to confirm that we belong there.
Yeah.
And it seems, and I think probably most of us have learned is that no matter what we do, we're never going to be confirmed and fully accepted in some spaces. But one of the things that I really was excited about during the confirmation hearings, and it spoke to me, was that there was a Cory Booker in the audience. And just as things were getting really tough, here either a Cory Booker or maybe another senator would say, hey, take a break. And instead of asking any questions, they kind of use their time to talk about and defend her. And so we need people like that in our lives. And it kind of spoke to me. Cory Booker was almost like a Holy Spirit in that part. At times he was like, hey, you're not going to steal this woman's joy. He spoke up for her. He encouraged her. There were times there were tears in her eyes. And I wondered if she felt that she was being weaker, showing weakness by showing tears. So what were your thoughts on the parts where she was being encouraged, feeling uplifted, and then being able to show some emotion? She couldn't show anger.
No.
But she could show tears. Let's talk a little bit about that.
The tears show the humanity.
Yeah.
The tears showed I'm human. The tears showed I'm breakable. The tears show that you can touch me. That, the tears show that I'm no different from anybody else in the room. And yet, there was a drum major in the room for her.
Yes.
And we all need drum majors in the
Yes.
room. And Cory Booker for her. And Senator Durbin, to the extent that he could in his role as chair. They were all drum majors for her. Those were the individuals I think that, she needed to have in that space and in that time to support her, to lift her, to encourage her. It was a difficult process.
Yes.
It would be a difficult process for anyone.
Yes.
And I don't mean to suggest that some measure of vetting isn't appropriate, because it is. In that system, you have in the room individuals who represent the American people. It's not an elective process where you can, as someone who's going to cast a vote, say to me, well, Judge Cobbs, what is your view about this? In that system, the individuals who would speak for you or for you, Pastor, in an election are the senators. They had some responsibility to vet and to ask the hard questions. But hard questions aren't necessarily fair or appropriate questions. So
That's the key word.
they had the responsibility to ask the fair questions that would give everyone insight into whether Justice Jackson, although legally competent, was also the best candidate to sit on the Supreme Court. Not unfair, not nasty, not disrespectful.
Right.
And there was more of that in the room that I thought should ever have been in that room.
Got it. Good word. Pastor, we want to jump in on that?
Yes, I totally agree, because we come up with that notion that I have to be, you said 3 times better. I had heard someone say 10 times better.
Wow.
You know, that I have to, there's always a notion of I have to prove myself. Because when we think about where we came from, like you were saying, Justice Cobb, I didn't come from a family like that. My father was a furniture refinisher. My mother was a postal worker. I was the first one to go to college. So I knew there was a responsibility that I knew that I had to do well. And I think when we think about maybe in that process in the back of her mind, because her family, I was reading about her family history. She has a very strong family history of professionals. So I know she's probably thinking there is an expectation, not just to others on the outside, an expectation to the Brown family, because her maiden name is Brown. I have an expectation to my family that I must do well.
Yeah. So let's talk about just the justice system as a whole, and it's a very controversial system within the Black community. A lot of times we have not received fair shakes within the justice system. So why is it important that we have Black judges, or is it important? Will it make a difference?
I think you already know my answer to that. And I can remember, as we were recalling before we even started recording this program, I can remember when Victory hosted the African American judges who
That was awesome.
hold membership in the Illinois Judicial Council. And it was so important to do that because it gave an opportunity for all of Victory, which cast a wide net in the Southland. It was important for Victory to see the Black judiciary. So when you walk into a courtroom, which for most people still is not a comfortable environment in which to walk. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how old you are. Generally, you don't want to go to court because there are too many unknowns. Judges talk in funny terms. They use funny words, and lawyers talk fast. And so when you walk into a courtroom and you see in the courtroom that someone is on the bench who looks like you, who likely shares some of your same values, who may have had the same community experiences that you do, it doesn't mean you're going to get a different treatment than a white litigant. But what it does mean, and what it does hopefully assure, is, great, this is someone that I think that I can trust, that I can believe in. It builds confidence. When the judiciary reflects what the community looks like, then I think the community has more trust and confidence in the judiciary. So when the judiciary is all white, well, when you're Black, you're not necessarily trusting of that. I can't take these words back because from the pulpit, when we did come, I said something like, justice has not always been about just us,
Wow.
right? It hasn't been. And it's no secret that Black and brown defendants are often convicted and often are given greater sentences than their white counterparts. That's a paradigm shift that we must continue to work to achieve because it ought not be that way. So we still got work to do in that arena.
Awesome.
So what's next? We've made it to the Supreme Court. What's next for us? What does this mean for us in the future?
Now, just by the very fact that you said we made it, what's good? What's next for us? So there's, to me, the sky's the limit. if we are supporting our young people, as Justice Cobb was saying, you're talking to the high school students who are at such an impressionable point in their lives. What's next for us? I like that. We have to keep letting people see us in our daily, everyday walk around lives, that we can say, yes, Elder Bryant Warren is a person of integrity. And whether they do aspire to become a judge or something else, they say, oh, I can do that. I could be a pastor. I could be a preacher, or whatever it is. When they see us giving examples, like Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. When we are examples of integrity, of character, that, like you said, that gives a young person a chance to say, oh, they're doing that. I can too.
That's awesome. That's good. Well, I appreciate having both of you here today. This has been a great conversation, and we're going to do this again. We're going to invite you back again to come. And so when I call, please answer the phone. Maybe you'll answer the phone. I know she's going to be here on Sunday, so I just grab her.
I'm going to hide.
And you come out. But before we leave, I just want to remind our audience that you too are confirmed. Despite what you are going through on your daily jobs, at home, God sees you. Yes. We see you, and you are confirmed. And the powerful piece about what Justice Jackson went through was that not only was her family in the room, but the family was outside the room. And I believe that she felt our spirit as we were watching. We were praying for her as she was going on. She could feel our anger. She could feel our happiness for her as well. And you should feel the same thing. God is watching over you. Despite what anyone may say about you, you too are confirmed. You are a child of God. God loves you, and don't let anybody steal your joy. So again, I want to thank Assistant Pastor Darice Whitted for being here.
Thank you for the invitation.
My good friend, Justice Cynthia Cobbs, for coming in.
My pleasure.
We will look forward to seeing you again at our next social justice outreach Victory at the Table talk. So thank you for being here. Please share this with your friends. Post it on Facebook, Instagram. Share this important podcast with your family and friends. God bless.
Thank you.
Come get your